Welcome to Peak, Train Like a Girl, a podcast by female athletes and coaches for female athletes and coaches. We're here to amplify your voice because it deserves to be heard. At Peak, we empower female athletes and coaches with knowledge, resources, and support we think is necessary in today's athletic environments to thrive. Join us for bold conversations about the experience of female athletes. Our discussions will make you laugh, cry, cheer, get frustrated, and hopefully rethink the future of girls in sport for generations to come. So whether you're walking, commuting, or cleaning your bedroom, take us with you. Follow us, check out our website, consider making a donation, and make sure you share with a female athlete or coach you love. Now, here's just a little information on our next guest. Our next guest, Mia, probably doesn't know this, but I probably knew her before she knew me. I work and coach in a conference up in Northern Illinois, and she happened to have run in the same conference. I was intrigued by her from the very beginning, and it's not because she's a fabulous athlete, and she is a fabulous athlete, but I saw the way she engaged with others, including other girls on my team, and also I saw the way she kind of held herself, and it really allowed me to understand, I think, a little bit about her before I really knew her. The first opportunity I had to chat with her, she was warm, friendly, engaging, and I knew it was someone I would be connected to forever. So I don't want to share any more about Mia's story. I want her to introduce herself, and let's go ahead and get started. And Megan and Mia, if you guys don't mind, let's do the warm up together. How about that?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, Mia, you're first. Joggers or leggings?
Ooh, I am a joggers person now.
Nice.
Definitely joggers.
Yay. All right, Megan, traditional bike or e-bike?
Traditional.
Mia?
E-bike because I spend far too many hours cross-training on it.
Love it. All right, let's do Megan. Line dry or dryer?
Ooh, dryer.
Mia?
Dryer.
Nice. All right, here's a really important one. Mia, boxed mac and cheese or homemade?
I am a boxed mac and cheese fan.
Ooh, Megan?
I think I'm going to go homemade.
All right. The controversy's real. All right. Last question. Megan, this one's for you first. Camping or 4-star hotel?
Camping.
I
Yeah.
unfortunately am a 4-star hotel.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And actually, maybe that's because Mia, is it just me or is the worst thing about running cross country the porta potties?
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody quite appreciates that.
But it's the privilege of being able to cut a massive line because you're like, I have a race in 5 minutes, and then you get to cut the whole line.
Exactly. There you go. Well, no one's going to believe that of the 60-year-old me. I can't use that.
Yeah.
I'm coaching the next race. Let me in. Well, thank you so much for playing the warm-up game with me. I really appreciate that. Mia, I want to go ahead and get started. We're actually doing a double episode with Mia, so we're going to spend the first episode kind of talking about her introduction to running and running culture and cross country, and we'll spend the second episode diving more into her collegiate career. But why don't you start just by introducing yourself and letting us know how you got started in sport?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I was a runner, I was obviously a soccer player, as is the classic soccer player to cross-country runner pipeline. But growing up, I dabbled in all sorts of sports. I really was just reaching for anything I was good at. Ended up being soccer for a while, and I played from probably early preschool to my freshman year of high school. And I absolutely loved soccer. My team was so important to me, and my best friends today are still my old soccer teammates from middle school. So I think I really gained a lot out of that, learning how a team dynamic works and just building my friendships. I savor them to death. And I transitioned across country freshman year of high school because my dad ran in college and running was always just like a very important and like fun thing to follow in my household, but I never ran myself until freshman year of high school. So it was just a really fun transition to be able to play soccer and run cross country at the same time. And then I just absolutely fell in love with the sport my freshman year. And I was like, it's time to hang up the cleats and put on my spikes and get out there and just like enjoy this team dynamic because it's so special.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I knew that. I knew that you were a multi-sport athlete, which I love because I think it did or does a couple things. First of all, it gives you exposure to so much, but as a young girl, I also do think it decreases injury. And not coming to a more serious running program into your freshman year really kind of meant you weren't maybe as broken down or beaten down as some people. Do you think that's true or not?
I think absolutely. Plus, I think there are a lot of very intense soccer players in middle school, but I played for, if anyone in Northern Illinois knows, I played for FCLC, which is like a pretty like medium intensity soccer program. And I think it kept me like very healthy. I was always a very active kid. But like aside from soccer, I did like random sports. Like I attempted horseback riding. I was a figure skater for a little bit and like nothing stuck. I unfortunately don't have the talents for those sports. Kudos to anyone who does. But I genuinely think just from being like such an active kid and bouncing around from sport to sport has kept me like very driven and very like overall a healthy human being. And I think it brought a lot of joy to just like be able to experience all these different sports growing up.
Yeah, I think that's right. And Megan, that was your same experience also, right?
Yes, definitely. I've touched on this before in my episode, but I just think that kind of like what you said, Anne-Marie, it just offers so much and there's so many different things you can learn that, at the end of the day, they do all relate. So I'm a big fan of that. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's talk about, Mia, your experience then through high school. So you started as a freshman. My guess is you weren't a phenom as your freshman, or were you?
Correct on I was not a phenom. So I'd say my like cross country journey began in 8th grade because before I was like a cross country athlete, I put myself as like a diehard fan of running. And I think that's just from growing up in a household where my dad and his best friends are like his teammates from college at Northwestern. And my brother was a runner throughout high school. So I think growing up in like an environment where I was surrounded by running and I could like follow the culture growing up, but not like actually be a part of it was really healthy for me. And like in 8th grade, while I was still playing soccer, had yet to run a cross country race. I went to NCAA nationals hosted at Wisconsin in 2018. And that was like my first look at collegiate running. And I was like, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen. And like immediately I fell in love with the sport. And that day was like a snowy terrain up in Wisconsin. And I was like, this is just so cool. Like you have this crowd of women, like countless amounts just sprinting for at that point, like 6K. And I was like, oh my God. So I was like, this is awesome. And then I started running my freshman year after seeing that. And I was like, this is just so cool. And I was like, obviously I can get there one day, but let's just start running. And my first race, I ran like 25 minutes and
nice.
Back, I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is so descriptive of me seeing that freshman year. I ran probably like 8:10 pace for half of the season during my races. And I was like smiling, giggling, talking with friends throughout the races. And I think that's just like very reflective of me as a person, like being able to have that transition and like build myself up, but knowing like at my roots, like I was the girl like giggling and like sticking her tongue out with my friends, like in pictures. So
yeah,
no, not at all. I was not a freshman phenom, but I'm really grateful that I wasn't. And I think that being able to build up as an athlete and like really enjoy the sport for what it is rather than like put so much pressure on myself created like such a love for it and like everyone I've been involved with in it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. One of the things we talk about in the running world in general is, and I am using air quotes here, that freshman phenom syndrome. And unfortunately what happens a lot of times with that is, the minute girls go through puberty, they tend to get slower. The counter to that is they postpone going through puberty because they're, not eating enough calories or they're over exercising. They don't get their period. And then also, ability to perform also declines because of that. And so I think that happens a lot with freshmen that come in that are so good. And then inevitably there is some kind of fall off that sophomore or junior year. And it's not that kids can't figure that out. I mean, they can figure it out. It's just they have to be willing to not be the best. So I think that you were in a unique position because you didn't start off as the best. So you weren't starting off on top and then just kind of pushing through some ceiling. You were starting, somewhere, you probably weren't at the bottom, somewhere in the middle-esque, and you knew, hey, you know what, if I just kind of stick with this and do the right steps, I can figure this out. I have enough, history with me. I have enough background in running. My dad ran in college. I've seen it. So did you kind of feel that? Did you feel like that was also less of the pressure because you didn't start off on top?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not having that on myself really allowed myself to grow, physically grow. I hit puberty at the correct age. And I think that has really, really helped me throughout the years because all throughout high school, I would deem myself on a healthy rate of growing, and I got my period in 7th grade. So I was always fairly consistent and aware of I should have this cycle going on. And I think that was just so important to me to be able to grow as an athlete and grow as a human being and not have them counter each other, because I wanted to be great and I knew I could be, but I was I'm not going to put my body in the way of it or harm puberty as a whole. So I really think me getting that start as just going out there for the social aspect really allowed my body to be able to grow and perform as the years progressed, instead of having that peak freshman or sophomore year and then really just kind of being left alone in terms of not having a sense of your personality, aside from the sport. I feel that's a large aspect of freshman phenoms. Once you kind of decline, those are fundamental years to grow your personality. And now you're with it. So I really just think that my progression was perfect in all aspects of physical and mental growing.
Yeah, there's so much there. We may have to go to 3 episodes. Okay. So first of all, I have to tell you, the fact that you were aware of your menstrual cycle and the value it had to you from a health perspective. I mean, Megan and I have talked about that. I didn't know that when I was growing up, and, Megan was unaware of the exact value of it, mostly because it wasn't talked about. Why did you understand that? Who was talking to you about it?
I don't think it was ever growing up, my mom and I talked about puberty as a normal thing. It wasn't something that was not spoken about in my house, but I don't think it was authority that necessarily taught me about my physical health. It was more my teammates freshman year. Was the only freshman on of 4 seniors, I think at the time was our varsity squad, and then the rest were freshmen. But I think it was something that being around them, I learned about, and I thought that was I was the little freshman on the team, so this was all kind of new to me. But hearing them talk about training, and one of them has celiac disease, so she was always very aware of her physical health and growing. So I think hearing the conversations was very eye-opening to me, and honestly amazing. I've learned so much from those girls too, and I loved them so much. Our team at that time was I won't speak on it now because I love my team now, but throughout high school, I think that year was my favorite group of girls, and we were just so tight knit. And I think I learned so much just being a young freshman progressing and really growing as an athlete, and having these older girls to look up to, and they've been running their whole life. They have experience, and they really taught me that as we went on.
That's amazing. You were really lucky there. And I know that was a good experience. I do want to kind of move through that freshman year, at some point something clicked because, and you can go into, your accolades, for yourself, but you turned into a very high performer at the high school you were at, obviously being recruited to run Division I. So I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about where was the switch there? What happened? But the other thing I do want to talk about is it didn't come without some hiccups. So as awesome as that freshman year was, there were some hiccups along the way. And I saw that as a coach sitting, kind of observing from the outside. So can you kind of fill in the blanks there?
Yeah. So after my freshman year, the boys coach of our team, who was the most beloved person ever, passed away, and my coach ended up switching to their team. So we were kind of left a bit frazzled. A lot of the seniors graduated that kind of held our team together. And I know this is something you've been waiting upon, but I started training with the boys team, which genuinely was one of the coolest experiences of my life to switch from these two different groups of girls, because I went from training with this girls who were so supportive to kind of being this little underdog girl. These boys at the time the boys on my team at that time were very, very great. But it was a switch that was just I would say completely changed how I trained. And it was a lot more motivation and commitment that I gained from training with them every day. And it was also so incredibly tough to not have a girls team that I could train with. And I think that is something that I'm so, so grateful for now, that we'll get into during my recruiting process. But training with the guys team, I ended up training with my coach from freshman year, because he's the boys coach as well. He really helped me out with being able to stay a reliable and consistent coach throughout that time. But it's really, really hard to be training with boys who are not your actual teammates. They are your teammates, but they're not the ones you're racing with. And I felt a lot of disconnect from being the top athlete on my team, but not training with them. And it kind of feels like I empathized for the girls that were on my team that would look up to me and be this is our top female athlete and she's training with the guys. And it's just a very difficult situation to be in. I regrets of not more time with the girls and kind of understanding why I'm training with the boys and spending my time in the right areas. But that was the massive switch with my training. And I think mentally that got me to the place of it kind of taught me I can eat up girls on the course. I'm eating up boys in this workout. I can eat them up on the course. And it really gave me a sense of confidence and a reliable group of training partners. It was just an amazing year and a half that I gained with them.
That's awesome. And and that's the tricky part. It was kind of reflecting on that just a little bit. There's other high school sports where that happens. Wrestling is the one that comes to mind. There is no girls wrestling team. And so the girls that want to wrestle with the boys team. I mean, that just is what it is. So if there's not a team in place or a team in place that's going to work for you, the alternative is to be put into the system that's there. And, it was a good experience for you because it pushed you from an athletic perspective, but from a social perspective, there were definitely some struggles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you could go ahead.
No, yeah. So I want to talk about that, because one of the things I want to talk a little bit about that. So you're performing at a high level, and you're competing, you're winning races, you're obviously, and going back to what you were even talking about, the joy, you could see the joy on your face. It wasn't that you weren't competitive. You could see, aside from the competitive piece, that there was joy in what you did. You were engaging with other people. You could tell that the social aspect of sport was something that was also really important to you. And, is that what made it tough?
Yeah, I would say aside from having the boys team, I really gained a sense of belonging with the other girls that were kind of the top in our conference. So I became very close at meets or even just on training runs with some of the other top girls in the other schools around me. And I felt that really brought me a sense of it brought me more of a community with the girls side with running, but it also was difficult for the girls on my team to see Mia being friends with the other top girls and running with the boys. And I like looking back, I'm just like so regretful to not be like more of a female leader on my own team and playing into like training with the boys. And I'm like gaining this now that I'm on such like an amazing female team in college. Like I understand the sense and feeling and support you get of being in a group of 22 like incredible females that are also powerful and supportive. And I'm like, if I only knew that was like achievable in high school, totally would played into it and like brought that sense to my girls team.
Yeah, I feel bad. That feels like a really big burden for you to carry. So, it's interesting because at that point you wanted to achieve success. You wanted to be the best that you could be. And then you knew at that point also that there was the definite possibility that you could perform at a much higher level after high school. So, in all due respect, I respect the fact that you're coming back and saying that, but that's one of the things we're here to talk about. Being a girl in sport is hard because if you flip that around, Mia, and if it was a boy he was the only, he was the best boy and they didn't really have a coach and the best coach in the world was coaching the girls and he came to run with you, no one would do anything but respect him. Like, oh my gosh, look at him going out there to be a beast and, to perform at his best. And it's not quite the same standard for girls. I mean, am I right or wrong?
Yeah. I mean, that is just so true. And like, it's something that looking back, I don't feel it as a burden, but I'm just like, I wish more girls and teams that maybe aren't as close could understand like the power that really comes out of like a group of women that work together. Like it is the most like the best thing I've gained from this past year in college, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But it's like it's an unmatched amount of support and like love for the women you're training with.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That position of power that women can be each other's cheerleaders and that there's enough room up top for all of us. That's a hard message to get because what we've been told is there's not enough space for you. It's a position of lack. Like there's only so many spaces out there and there's only so much money to get and there's only, so much where men grow up with a mentality that you can do anything you want. So I think you're right. I think we are moving more and more into a area and arena where we can support other strong, powerful women and understand and recognize that there's room up there for all of us. What I want to do is kind of take that story. And I know that you also, outside of the girl relationships on your team, you had some other, more social issues in relationships in regards to maybe let's call it social safety. Yeah. Would you be willing to share some of that?
Oh, I just said yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I know. I think you're cutting out and in a little bit. I think it's going to end up being totally fine. But I would, okay, again, we want to bring awareness. So yeah, if you just share some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think something once I was through kind of my like formative years of cross country, I'd say freshman and sophomore, and I started to gain momentum and more success. I had my first relationship and I was a very like growing up, I was very close with all my best friends and I had like really great relationships, but I'd never been in a romantic relationship. And I think obviously this is very common for like girls in high school, but once you're getting into one, there's so much you find out about yourself. And there's also like, there's so much that is unknown. So I was entering junior year with all this momentum behind my running. I was very involved with school. So there's just like, it was really great. And I think junior year, like I had so much that I was succeeding in and it was really amazing. And I just entered this new relationship and I was just like very, very happy with where I was. And that to me is like a very successful female, which can be intimidating to others.
Sure.
And I think something that I learned from that relationship that like I really is necessary to shed light on is like surrounding yourself with the people that you. And at that time, the relationship I was in didn't give me like the stability and support that I needed to be performing like so highly in all these areas. Also, just like being a successful female with men, like there's insecurity there, just like in a relationship. It was a lot for like a high schooler to deal with. And I really want like high school athletes to know that like you can succeed on all these levels that you want to, whether it's like athletic, school, relationship wise, like it is possible to succeed in all those areas. Looking back, I just really wish I knew that it was possible if you have the right people in your life. And I think bringing up the conversation of social safety on top of, physical health and mental health is so, so necessary. I know you've talked about it with some other athletes since I brought this up initially, but it's just something we don't talk about because I think high school relationships are looked at in a way where it's like, doesn't matter that much. Like it's a relationship in high school at the like brink of it, like looking back, that's a small portion of your life, but it's a really like formative time, and having like this success come on with not a supportive person in my life really took a toll on like performance in the other areas. And I just think it's like so necessary to talk about with like successful females for one, and like bringing up support in like all these areas with relationships.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think I had shared with you, we have an awesome survey that's out there for any current or former female high school athlete. And I didn't have anything on there prior to talking to you about social emotional safety in romantic relationships, friendships, or even relationships with others. That would include coaches. And I agree with you. I think it is so important. And I want to kind of pinpoint what you said, because I think we've all done that. People are like, oh, it's just a high school relationship. They're using the word just, which is like, that word drives me crazy. They're kind of minimizing the impact that this has. And you're exactly right. These are such formative years that this is no just anything. This has complete impact on who you are at a very volatile time in your life. And having the ability to speak up about that is, I think, so important. I don't know, Megan, do you have anything you want to kind of say there before we wind things down?
I feel like for me personally, this is not something I feel like I have a ton of information about or have a ton of friends with this experience. So this is super, interesting and informative. So thank you, Mia, for sharing.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that maybe also too, one of the reasons you haven't heard about it, I think it's still one of those conversations that are still a little taboo. So I am so thankful, Mia. Thank you so much for having the candid conversation, and thank you for bringing it to light and allowing other people to maybe ask the question or second guess something that doesn't quite feel right. Can't wait for our next conversation. And actually, before we head off, I want to make sure we do just a little cool down, because I don't want to leave with, everything not ready to go. How about, what is your favorite soothing smell, Mia?
I am a big fan of like a warm vanilla candle or the volcano anthropology candle specifically.
Oh, I love it. And I love that it's so specific. All right. This is another one of my favorite questions. What is a food that you wish was portable enough to eat on a bus after competition?
Oh my God. Well, I think all of my favorite foods already are portable enough because I am the biggest enjoyer of like anything bowl form. So I'm a bad candidate for that question.
That's awesome. And everything comes in a bowl now.
I know. They're so smart with it.
I know. Okay. All right. Well, I can't wait to hear the rest of your journey on our next podcast. So please remember, Peak is more than a podcast. We're a community. We're here to share education and personal stories. We're here to inspire and to uplift. So if our episodes resonate with you, make sure you hit the follow button. Make sure you share with your friends. Join us on Instagram at Peak Train Like a Girl. Check out our website. There's so much valuable information there. And if you're feeling extra generous, consider supporting us. Because here at Peak, we're driven by passion, not by sponsors. We can't wait for you to join us on our next episode as we dive a little deeper.